So if you're a beginner at free motion quilting, you're going to need some patterns to get you started, aren't you? And I have got 6 patterns in this with a little bonus one for you, just to get your juices flowing. So to get started, you are going to need a few of these. That's some practice quilt sandwiches and a pair of those. Some quilting gloves, and we're going to work through them slowly. Now, just before I hop on to the first pattern, I have done this video just a little bit differently for you. So I have put my camera on slow-mo. Go me, I've discovered how to do that. So I've gone close up into those free motion patterns, and I've slowed those stitches right down so that you can see exactly where the needle is going, because I know there's nothing more frustrating than trying to suss out what the tutor is doing and you can't see. So you won't have that in this video, but don't worry, it's not all slow-mo. I've sped up as well to skip some of the boring parts. So I really hope it helps. Please do let me know how you get on in the comments below this. I'd love to hear from you, and if you've got any questions, don't forget to ask. But without further ado, let's get on to our first pattern. Okay, in this pattern we're doing a meandering loop, and the idea, as you can see, what I'm doing here is meandering about. So that's just taking your needle in pretty much any direction you'd like and putting some loops in. It's really originally named, and it doesn't matter where you put the loops. It doesn't matter which direction you put the loops. This is entirely up to you. It doesn't matter which direction you are quilting in. The idea is you're just merrily meandering about, just wandering about with your needle. Don't worry about the directions. Don't worry about the size of loops. Don't worry if you go a little bit wrong, just like I've done there. Don't worry if you crash into one of the other loops. Just get this flow going. And in fact, if you get a bit lost and you lose your way, or like here, I'm going up to the edge. There's a little teeny tiny loop there. You see, it doesn't matter where you're going. So we're going to go round here, and then we're going to come down because I'm a little bit close to the edge there. So as I come down, and in my head I'm thinking, oh, where do I go from here? What you can now do is echo round your shape, just as I'm doing here. All I'm doing is pretty much following the edge of the sew lines or the quilting lines. It doesn't have to be measured exactly. It's just roughly following those patterns. And when you stand back from quilting, nobody will ever notice. Nobody will know that you got a bit stuck and you didn't know which direction to go in. So echoing your shapes is amazing. And just meandering, looping the loops in any which way direction is a really good pattern to start with. Okay, we're going to do a very basic orange peel. And if you want to follow along with me, you can practice by starting quilting yourself a square. And yes, you can do this free motion as well. So if you just come down towards you, and if you're wondering about how straight your line needs to be, it doesn't really, but the trick is to look where you're going. So follow the line down, and where my finger stopped just there, then that's where you look. And if you look at that point where your needle is going to come to, then you won't really waver off a straight line. So let's draw this box first. So now we're going to start the orange peel, and really that's just creating a semicircular segment going from one corner to another corner. And you can do this in any direction you like, whatever is easier for you. So here we are, I'm drawing how to get from one corner to the next corner. And in this particular orange peel segment, I'm going to go across horizontally from left to right. If you're left-handed, then go from right to left. The beauty of your free motion is that you can go any direction you like. So experiment as you're coming round this square and see which direction that works best for you, because you may find going from left to right works for you. You may find that going the opposite direction works for you. You may find that going up and down works for you. So the purpose of doing this is to experiment and play and find out what works. So we can see here, as my machine is going really slow, actually it's the camera going really slow, we're coming around in a nice semicircular fashion, and how I'm going to match up with that corner as it's coming up to the needle is I am looking at that corner of my box, and that helps me guide the needle. Oddly, it works. You don't necessarily need to look at the needle. You just need to look at where you're going, and your needle will magically end up there. Okay, so that's going from left to right. Now let's turn the fabric around. And this time I'm going to come down in the same way. Now, with this particular pattern, the orange peel, I don't find this as easy as going from left to right, but I wanted to show you all the different ways that you could do this. So it gives you confidence to just practice along with me and know that even if it's not perfect, it doesn't matter. So many people are a little bit scared, or quite a lot scared, to try free motion quilting. But I want you to find the confidence and knowing that the world isn't going to end if you've got a little bit of a dodgy stitch. And when I finish this, you'll see that even though my stitches close up when you're looking at this probably aren't perfect, when you stand back and look at it, it looks great. And you'll see in the next section where I've filled in a little bit, it actually doesn't matter at all. So I really want to encourage you just to practice and play on some practice quilt sandwiches. There we go. You can see it's not a perfect curve just at the top of the screen there, at the top of the green box. It was a little bit dodgy in the middle, but that's okay. So let's get on and do this after I've removed the thread and come down on this side. There you go. So you have a very effective square with some orange peel in it. And those curves aren't perfect, but when you stand back, it won't matter. What's more important, as I said, is that you practice and you play with the curves. But honestly, when this is in a quilt, in squares, doing those orange peels, you won't notice if they're slightly out or they're not quite even. Right at the moment, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're probably not going to enter this into a competition. I wouldn't either. But we can look really impressive and create some amazing designs just by doing some very simple patterns. But the more you practice this, the much better it becomes. And when you have lots of squares like this with the orange peel, you get some amazing effects. Draw it out on paper and then just put one next to the other and you'll see how good this looks. Right, let's get on to the next one then. This one is a really easy one. You don't need to be perfect. This is a basic filler. Now, as you can see with my finger here, we're just going to go up and down. That's all we're doing. It's great for filling in little sections on your quilt. So all we're going to do is start coming towards us, just as I'm going to do some stitching on the spot, just like here. Have you ever seen a needle in slow motion, by the way? Okay, and we're just coming towards us. And then when you get to the bottom of the section that you're filling in, you just do a little curve and then you just come back up again. It doesn't need to be even. It doesn't need to be perfect. And you'll see in a minute when you've got a whole line of this, or when it fills in a section, honestly, if you're uneven, which you probably will be, it doesn't matter. You really don't notice. So don't forget, I've got my camera pointing right in on a zoom. You're watching, you might be watching on your phone, you might be watching on your TV or your computer. Obviously, that's gone through all the choices. But you're watching on a relatively big screen, zoomed in 4K high definition. Now, in reality, nobody is going to be looking at your quilting in those kind of conditions. What happens really is that you're using this particular pattern to fill in a little section on your quilt, as I said. So if your stitch goes a little bit wibbly wobbly or those lines aren't very even, then so be it. It doesn't matter. Nobody is going to notice. Okay, so I'm not going to do too much of this. I think I had some thread there that was getting in the way. I also discovered on these practice quilt sandwiches, because I made these up just a couple of days ago and I left them on my cutting table. And then when I came back to them, even though my door had been closed, I discovered cat hairs on them. And Shadow, if you have been with me for a little while and you have met my cat on video, you'll know he is a black cat and he does like to leave his black cat hairs everywhere. So there's probably some of those lurking about as well. So don't worry, I'm not doing loads of this, but I just want to show you. You can see actually just at the left there, that's the loop. The loops aren't even at the bottom. This is easier when you've got a defined top and bottom to match. So if you've got a defined section on a quilt, this is a lot easier to do because you know where to stop and you know where to start. If you drew lines with a quilt marker, that'll help you as well. But really, it is a pretty effective pattern to do. And the tighter that you do this, the stiffer that area of the quilt will become. If you keep it quite loose and airy, it will be softer. Okay, so have a play with this one. Practice with those up and down loops close together. So let's show you what this looks like when I put it on the orange peel and fill in all those sections of the orange peel. And then you can see why it didn't matter if my loops are a bit wonky on the orange peel. So let's go and have a look at that. So I apologise, the camera is a little bit out of focus here, but hopefully you can see where we're just going to fill up this section. I'm just going to do this little bit in slow motion and then we'll speed up and go around the rest of the orange peel. And if you're wondering why I've got a strange bit of masking tape stuck under my light of my machine, just above the needle there, it is because the light shines down onto the fabric and it bounces back onto the camera and then you can't see what I'm doing. So I have discovered a highly technical way of covering it up with a bit of masking tape. So there you go. In fact, masking tape is a really useful thing to have in your sewing kit. If you haven't got it already, get yourself some masking tape because it helps you out in all sorts of things. Okay, so can you see how all I'm doing is doing that filler and I'm going up and down as we did before when I was showing you how to do it close up, and then just stopping when I reach one of my quilt lines. And if you miss a little bit, does it matter? It's not the end of the world. But you'll see when we finish this section how effective this can be. Okay, so let's speed up to the end of this bit and then whiz round the rest and have a look at that. Ta-da! There we go. So can you see we've gone all the way around with that nice filler. We've filled in those bits of the orange peel, the curves of the orange peel. I've even gone over a little bit on one place. The look of it is really effective. It doesn't matter if it's not even, it doesn't matter if you miss a bit, it doesn't matter if it's a little bit wibbly wobbly. The overall effect is a really strong, powerful effect, and you get a nice shape going on. And that honestly is quite easy to do when you're starting out and practicing, but just play on these practice pieces and get the confidence going. And if you're practicing on your practice quilt sandwiches, if you go wrong, it doesn't matter. That's why we're doing this together. So have a play with this one. And now what's next? I can't remember. Let's go and check that out. How could I forget? This is one of my faves. Okay, so this is a leaf. And we're going to start by making ourselves an elongated oval. So it works better probably if you come towards you with a little curve, come to a point, and then you go backwards and making a curve and meet the top of the leaf the other way. So I had a bit of loose thread there. Remember, if you're stopping for any point, make sure you do a little stopping action on the spot. So 3 or 4 stitches on the spot. So can you see I'm just looping around a little bit and then coming back to join up where I started. So we're going to stop on the spot. So we start with this shape, and then all we're going to do is echo this shape. So then we're going to come back and we're just going to echo that shape, but just go a little bit wider this time. Okay, so you can start seeing a leaf taking place. Ta-da! And then what we do is we start building this up. So let's do a bit of that. Okay, so I'm going to make this leaf a little bit bigger. And you can see as I come round it again, all I'm doing is echoing that same leaf shape. It doesn't need to be equidistant. Nature isn't nice and equal. And I know you're going to come back and say, well, this is equal. But generally, nature isn't so uniform. And that's what makes it interesting. And that's what makes it good for us, our soul. And even if it's not all equidistant, we get a really good look. And by the way, these make really good candle flames. If you imagine it the other way around, that would make a very good candle flame. So if you want to go in another direction, we can simply turn our quilt sandwich around and decide where we're going to go next. So this time I'm going to come out in this direction, kind of at right angles to our first leaf, and I'm going to do the same thing again. So I do my inner leaf, or the inner bit of the leaf first. So the little baby leaf, or the innards, or your candle flame. And just as a reminder, I'm not sewing very slowly. I've got my camera on slow-mo, as it were. It's worth going into your camera and playing with these things because you've got slow-mo and we have time lapse. So if you want to ever record things in slow motion, it's the slow-mo function. And if you ever want to record loads and loads and loads of things but have it all sped up, it's in time lapse. So there we go. Video lessons all at the same time. It's like multi-talented. Okay, so we're coming into where the leaves meet in the middle there, and we're stopping where those 2 quilt lines meet, but we're now going to come off in another direction. So let's go going with that. Okay. These are really nice to do. And you can build up these very quickly and fill in an area very quickly. And when you've done one leaf, you can stop for a moment and think about where you're going to do the next leaf. So it doesn't need to be continuous. And each part of the leaf, every time you come back to where the stalk would be, you can have a stop and have a little rest and decide whether you want to have a third bit of the leaf, like my first leaf. My second leaf only had 2 sections. There we go. So there's a little leaf there. And then we're going to build all the way up here. So now we've got going with this, let's speed up to the end of this particular video, and you can see, or this section of the video, and you can see how all these leaves build up really, really effectively. It looks far more complicated than it is, and I think personally, sorry, just before I speed it up, I think personally that doing curves is a lot easier than doing perhaps straight lines, or maybe even meandering, if I can get my words out. It just seems to be a natural pattern to do. It's very easy for your hands to move in that direction. There we go. And I've purposefully, on this leaf, given it a little stalk at the bottom. So I haven't gone all the way back to the start. I've created a long stalk, and then the leaf is coming off the stalk. Okay, right, let's speed up to the end of this then. There we go, and that's our little collection of leaves finished. Didn't it look great? And does it matter that all those little sections are not equidistant? No, it doesn't. You've just got this amazing effect. As I said before, it's very rare that you're going to see your free motion quilting on its own in purple thread on a lime green fabric. You're just not going to have that going on, particularly when you're starting out. You're going to be quilting on your quilt. And you may not want to do a big branch of leaves. You might just want to do 2 or 3 in a little area. So practice on your quilt sandwiches, and then you can go onto your quilt and do this if you want to do that. But you may find this is far easier than you ever thought possible. So let me know how you get on with this one. Right, the next one is another one that is really forgiving, and it looks really impressive when it's finished. So let's go and check that out. Right, here we're going to do a wavy crosshatch, and we're going to start by going from left to right across the screen here. And all we're doing is making waves. We're just going up and down, and it doesn't matter how even those are. Okay, so we've got a little wibbly wobbly line. So I'm then going to go across just a bit. I don't know what the measurement is, about an inch. You can see my needle's gone really slow there. That is because the camera is in slow-mo. And don't worry, I am going to speed this section up in a minute to show you. But I just wanted to chat this through, because having gone one way, we now need to come the other way. So it depends whether you prefer stitching from left to right, or right to left, or up and down. Now, if you're going to go up and down, it's always best really to come towards you, like I'm now going to do here. And the beauty of free motion, as I said in an earlier section, is that you can go in any direction you like. So experiment and play with this. I know you keep hearing me say these words, but experiment and play and see which direction you prefer going in. And it may be that you swap around, and that's fine too. You can start off going in one direction and you can change and going in another direction, and that's fine too. Now, when you're doing these curves, they don't have to follow the same pattern exactly. You don't have to match the curves up at all. So I'm going to go along a little bit because I'm going to go back up, but I am going to turn this little quilt sandwich around. So you can see I stopped on the spot there so that I can turn my quilt sandwich around, and I'm going to come back the other way. All right. And you can see by those curves, they sort of followed one another, but they didn't really. So you can go from left to right, or you can come towards you again. As I said, this is entirely up to you how you want to do this. So this is all I'm going to do, is build up a few of these waves. Now, if you're wondering about the evenness again, I'm just going to touch on that point. Just think of the sea and the waves in the sea, they're never even. So you cannot be even too. We're going with the majority here of the sea, and the sea's waves like going where they are. So we'll go where we want to go to. All right. So I'm going to speed up a little bit so we can build this up, and you'll see what happens when we go the other way. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to finish off my thread. I'm going to leave some long tails, and I'm going to bring my quilt sandwich out, and I'm going to put it back underneath to show you where to start. In reality, what you'd probably do is follow the line of your block or the little section that you're quilting, and you'd follow around so that you restart. But just for expediency and to help you see, I'm taking it out and starting again. And you can do this too if you want to. So what I'm doing is putting my crosshatch that I've just done, I'm putting that horizontally across the screen now. So I'm going to start and come back the other way. So let's get the needle all lined up. Okay, we got down to the bottom, stitch on the spot for a moment, and then we're going to come along a little bit. For this particular pattern, I guess I'm coming along about an inch or so, but it's entirely up to you. You can have them widely spaced apart, or you can have them really close up. It just depends on the space that you've got to fill in the block that you've got to fill. And you can see here I've turned my quilt sandwich kind of a very odd way around. You can turn it any which way you want. So all I'm going to do now is come back the other way. I'm not necessarily bothered about getting all my waves lined up. and you'll see when we finished how effective this looks. So I am going to stop with the jabbering and speed this section up till we get to the end, and then we'll meet at the end of our crosshatch. All right, so we're coming up to the last little bit, and we're going to stop about now. Stitch on the spot a little bit. I'm cheating, I'm just cutting my threads there. And can you see how effective that looks? And does it matter if all our curves match each other? No, it doesn't. It just looks like a great, very clever little bit of free motion quilting. But you and I know how that is done. If you can't think about quilting in a straight line, especially free motion quilting in a straight line, then this is probably the design for you, because it doesn't really matter how wobbly you are. In fact, this is designed for our wobbles, and we like things that are designed for our wobbles, don't we, everybody? Right, let's get on to the very last pattern then and go and see what that is. And that is herringbones, which I love. They're really easy. So we're going to start by going up to our top right. We're looping around and we're coming diagonally bottom right. And as the machine slows down, or the video slows down, we're looping around and we're coming up to the top right. And we loop off to the left. And we come down and we head down bottom right. Okay, so your loops are going in the opposite direction of travel. So that loop went off to the left, and then we come back and cross and we go back up again, top right. So it's a nice, easy pattern to do. Practice on paper first. And you can make these herringbones as wide or as narrow as you'd like. You can have them almost straight up and down next to each other. You do need that diagonal look, really. That's what makes a herringbone, but you can have them much closer together if you want to, or have them really spaced apart. You can make your loops huge or really tiny. You could even alternate them if you want to go wild and rogue. So have a play with these and see. So you can see here with the herringbones I'm about to do, they're getting a little bit closer together to show you the effect of what happens when we start bringing these in. So if we watch this just for a moment, how the look and feel of our herringbones change as we bring them a little bit closer together. So let's turn the quilt sandwich around, and you can see that they're really wide to start with, and they get closer together. So you could do that as well. However, there's another variation on this. In fact, there's a few variations on this, but this one is really easy. So let me move my needle over to where it needs to be. You don't need to do this. I've just, by the magic of camera, moved my needle over and stitched a straight line. That's just to save on thread and move my needle over. What we're going to do here is exactly the same. We're going to start stitching in a diagonal top right, diagonal to the top right, just as we did in the previous one. So let's get going with that. But this time, so I'm stitching on the spot, we go off to the top right diagonally. But this time we're going to do little triangular loops. Can you have a triangular loop? They're little triangles. So top right, and then we go off to the left in a little straight line. However long you want to go for, you could have big triangles or little triangles. Experiment and play, as I said. There's a theme to this, isn't there? It's experiment and play. We've made our triangle, we've come bottom right. We go off to the left, away from the direction of travel. And then we're coming back up diagonally top right again. Look at those. Don't you just love those? Okay, and off we go again. So over to the left. And then we're coming down to bottom right. You've got to love a triangle herringbone. And then when we get to the bottom, we go in the opposite direction over to the left. And then top right. And that's all there is to it. And by the way, if you're watching this and you're left-handed, there is no reason on this planet why you can't go in the opposite direction if that is easier for you. So play with both ways. And in fact, I don't think it really matters whether you're left or right-handed. You may have a more dominant ways that you prefer to go. Just play and see which direction works for you. So here are some smaller triangles coming up now. And they change the look. So if you've only got a small space to fill out, smaller triangles may be your thing. You could have them a little bit closer together if you wanted to, or you may like the big triangles. Okay, so as we're going top right and we're doing one final one, and then we're going to finish by switching on the spot, and doesn't that look good with our triangular herringbones? You got to give those a whirl. How did that go? I hope it went really well and you've been practicing some of these patterns, and this video has given you some confidence to practice and experiment and play, because that has been the theme for this video. So please let me know how you get on. Hey, I went a bit mad on this one as well, and I did some really dodgy pink in there, but you know, you can play with colours as well as your patterns. So if this has helped, please don't forget to like, subscribe and hit that notification bell, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye for now.